thanks to my Ko-fi supporters that make these videos possible. You can also get a deck review on my weekly Tuesday and Sunday streams. It's the best way to support the channel.
Hello everyone. My Kellen deck is my favorite commander deck, like, ever. It's a near perfectly tuned machine that threatens to meld my favorite cards, Bruna and Gisela, nearly every game. Bracket 3 is a casual format of Commander, one where you're expected to be winning around turn 7 in a lot of games, and this is firmly where I identify Kellen to be. Yet still, there's an albeit small but visible population talking about whether or not this deck that regularly melds brisela, especially when combined with her brother, Gaddock Teague, is appropriate for this level of play. Now, I'm not gonna lie, this video is in part driven by one particular comment, that being from Rob the Princess, in response to a post I made asking for my worst takes. He says, "The most objective worst take of mine has gotta be, game lockdowns are not a fun experience and you should avoid them, unless they're ones I like. Lockdowns being unfun is a very normal take, but then you seem to find your decks to be the exception there." Now, I do want to start by saying, thanks for the comment, Rob. I would not have thought about this video topic without your input, and it's a super interesting topic to dissect, I feel. Now, I do need to say, before we actually get into this topic, that I sent this comment to my editor during the video making and script writing process, as you do, and he said right away, when did you say that?" Which validated my memory on this response. I never, ever have said, lockouts are not a fun experience and you should avoid them. I actually find trying to beat a prison deck rather fun, whether that's by applying pressure before the pieces are assembled or finding a gap in the lock after it has been deployed. By the way, not blaming you here for misremembering something I said, this is actually something that happens all the time. People ask my podcast co-host, the Trinket Mage, all the time about his cool Judith deck when it's actually mine, stuff like that. One possible theory I have that may have spurred on this false memory, though, is that I have talked about lockouts and prison decks being a very tenuous line to walk in Commander, and you need to do it carefully. And hopefully I can give you a good explanation that satisfies you more than the ones I run are virtuous and the ones that you run are evil. One major example that I definitely remember talking about in a negative light on my weekly streams are Knowledge Pool locks. For those that don't know, Knowledge Pool basically exiles whatever spell you're trying to cast, and then you choose a different spell exiled with the pool to cast instead. This is a symmetrical effect, so the whole table has to play this silly spell swapping game. The only issue is when you implement a Rule of Law effect or a Vexing Bauble. Suddenly, no one can cast any spells anymore. Or, even worse, it can be one-sided with Boromir, Warden of the Tower, or Lavinia Azorius Renegade because you're not spending mana to cast the new spell. The reason why I specified this as a lockout I don't personally like too much is that it's too fast and easy to deploy and it doesn't develop a clock. Like, yeah, sure, if you have a Prosper in the command zone across from this lock, you can cast it, and since that isn't from your hand, it doesn't get exiled under the pool, then he can cast in a Braid or something for you to use from exile. Or you can Boseiju it, or Otawara it, or maybe you're a sicko and have a really niche playable card like an Ancient Grudge sitting in your graveyard. My point is that these are very narrow counterplay options here, which when combined with the lock speed, being just a 2-card combo with your commander if you have Lavinia in the command zone, makes this a pretty brutal and easy lock to assemble. Like, you can get this thing rolling as early as turn 5 most games and still have plenty of time to weave in protection pieces like a Grand Abolisher or whatever else you need. Anyway, my third point is one of the more major problems I have with this lock, however. That is that it doesn't also create a clock. What I mean by this is that after assembling the lock, you need an extra piece to start creating game-winning pressure to actually close out the game. Now, some people just say scoop to the lock like it's a combo, and while I do find merit in that line of thinking from time to time, I do want to make you have it some games before I decide that course of action. If I just give it to you for free, you can kind of just turbo the lock without having anything to win after it. Like, what if you Knowledge Pool lock me and you're now rocking out with one card in hand because you had to turbo control the early game? That tells me I have all the time in the world to dig for my outs here while you hope and pray for a good top deck to start putting on some real pressure. It's not like it takes that much more time than a normal Commander game to do this anyway, as a lock increases the number of turns in a game, sure, but those turns go by way quicker than real ones where players actually have options. I like locks that just come pre-packaged with the timer before the table gets got. Not ones that can just be panic deployed like this and lead to a weird waiting game where you desperately dig for some random 3/3 hate bear with flying to finally start chipping at people with. Now, I want to iterate, I'm not trying to demean you Lavinia enjoyers out there. It's just for these reasons that the combo is not personally something I find all that fun playing with in a deck. It doesn't really help that if you're not doing Lavinia or Boromir in that lock, that your 99 is made out of multiple dead draws too. Overall, just not really fun for me. So, what kind of locks are fun for me? And what justifiable reasons do I have that makes me find them more fun to pilot and play against than a knowledge pool lock? Well, we can start with the obvious example that opened this video, Brisela and Teague. Assembling this lock requires 13 total mana across 3 cards you have to try and find throughout your deck unless you're some sicko who decides to command zone Gaddock Teague. The deck I run is Selesnya, so of course I have no shortage of Legendary Matters tutors and Creature Matters tutors to go find the pieces. And quick mandatory tutor disclaimer, before you ask, no, I never get bored of winning the same way. This is literally my favorite thing to do in the whole world. And this deck is more about the journey than the destination, although I do like the destination quite a bit. What I find most engaging about this deck is the incomplete nature of the lock as well as how weird it is to assemble. Firstly, let's talk about this weirdness. The lock is a lot of mana, or a lot of setup. In the lot of mana camp, you can have Gisela cast during the early game, then Bruna, then Gaddock Teague. That's 13 mana. Alternatively, in the a lot of setup camp, you can mill Gisela with Kellen's attack trigger or a map token, or you can discard her to something like a Fauna Shaman, Gaia Reach Sanitarium, or the soon-to-be-released in Lord When Eclipsed, Formidable Speaker, and then use her sister's cast trigger to reanimate her for, drumroll please, a 4 mana discount. Still pretty decent, although you need to be wary of Grave Hate if you pursue this line. Then there's the issue with the meld trigger itself. Do you deploy it into open mana without a Voice of Victory or a Cutzil? Keep in mind, with that meld trigger on the stack, either Angel can get blasted by a removal spell on the end step to counter the lock before they can combine. Even tutoring for the lock can be rather fun in this deck. The strongest of these is Congregation at Dawn, which can stack the library with 3 cards, and then your draw step, map tokens, and Kellen can break open that pile like a Selesnya Doomsday. But I've done some downright silly things in a game, like tutoring for Fierce Empath with either Elvish Harbinger or Recruiter of the Guard, to then tutor for Bruna, or sacrificing my Selfless Spirit for literally no reason to just get enough mana value in my graveyard for Analyze the Pollens at Collect Evidence cost. I bemoaned the previous combo for having dead cards, but this one only really has Gisela as one. I've used Bruna plenty of times to reanimate Heronblade Elite, Thalia's Lancers, and Ranger Captain of Eos since she can hit angels or humans, and Gaddock Teague is pretty obviously good in a low-to-the-ground creature-dense strategy like this one. Even then, Gisela is a fine blocker that can dissuade early-game attackers and can really get funny with her first strike when alongside Kudo King Among Bears. Far less bad than a knowledge pool would be without friends. Anyway, let's talk about this lock's incomplete nature and speed now. It stops all small mana value 3 or less spells. Okay. It also stops all non-creature spells with mana value 4 or greater. Dope! I win, right? Wait, oh god. Here comes a 15,000 power flying Miss Bumbleflower. Well, I guess I gotta block her with the only flyer I have. Oop, here comes Solitude. Hell, here comes the Dinosaur or Hydra player, or Rogue's Passage. The number of stupid ways I've gotten the lock itself blown up or gotten blown up myself, despite assembling it, is innumerable. God, guys, do you know how often Brisela has gotten cloned? A handful of times. But that one is funny because all you need to do is crack a map token on Brisela and now she's one bigger than the opponent's. But anyway, the point still stands. Casual has a lot of giant creatures floating around, and this lock allowing them to slip through the seams creates interesting play even after the options have been dampened. These plays are also exacerbated by the fact that I typically achieve the lock by sometime around turn 7, sometimes 6 if I have a god hand and start taking risks like playing cards without first establishing protection or something, but mostly around turn 7 or 8. You know, like the turn you should be making winning moves by. Anyway, alas, we're back at my major sticking point here for locks where the previous one didn't really do it for me. The Brisela lock that I love so dearly puts on so much pressure. It is a flying, lifelinking 9/10 with vigilance. So when you have those locked turns of whelp, do nothing, pass, you maybe get 3 more turns of that before you're dead. This is what I especially love about the deck. It's impossible to play it and then durdle around wasting time. Once it is established, simultaneously, so is a turn timer to break out before everyone is dead. This remains true about the other lock I run as well, Elesh Norn and Kudo. This is an even looser lock than the one before it, still allowing opponents to cast spells. All it does is make opposing creatures 0/0s and mine 4/4s. Like, you're not living for long in that state against my 47 creature Selesnya deck's average board. I also gotta iterate how many times this lock as well has lost to that stupid goddamn rabbit. She just shits counters everywhere, on every creature in sight, making them survive being 0/0s, and then she gets flying after amassing 12 spin downs and kills me. She even has vigilance. Anyway, hopefully my bemoaning of Bumbleflower illustrates how truly fragile this game plan can be. Yes, it's a prison deck. Yes, it might not be everyone's cup of tea to play against. That's totally fine. But damn, is it a bracket 3 appropriate deck. It might be the shining jewel of my decks of what a middle of the pack bracket 3 power level looks like. So long as your deck is power leveled appropriately, respects everyone's time, and you don't have a bad attitude when you inevitably get 3v1'd when you start making movements that signal it's combo time, you can really play whatever you want. Just really quickly as well, I wanted to highlight some more locks that I find entertaining in the same vein here as the ones that I run in my personal decks, just to show I ain't glazing the locks that I run. There's a whole world of them out there to be explored that follow the formula that I like. Revisiting our good friend Elesh Norn, no, I'm not going to talk about Living Plane, you can combo her with Dovescape. This locks out all non-creature spells and is one-sided, where your birds are 3/3s and your opponents are -1/-1s. A really interesting option for an Azorius Flyers deck that can use either of these cards well. You can also use a different card alongside Dovescape to even greater effect though, that being Sarah's Emissary, which is a 7/7 flying beater. Just name creature as the protection that you and your creatures get, and your angel and doves can get through blockers, and she also protects you from counterattacks. Most removal in the game is non-creature based, making this one about as hard to break as the brisela lock, except slightly stronger because you don't have to worry about Mrs. Bumblefly. This video actually reminded me too, a deck I almost ended up building a long time ago was Light Paws, and the reason is that Pariah slots really well into a shell like hers. Especially now with cards like Redemption Arc, which provides indestructible and double strike, meaning that you no longer have to give up tempo to establish indestructibility for the Pariah deck. Like, yeah, it's meant to be a goad removal spell, but it works just as well in your commander since you're never going to have to hold her up to block with the whole Pariah thing going on. Also, we just got a goaded enchantment for this kind of deck in the form of With Great Power, which similarly does Pariah stuff while upping the pressure by being a personal Ancestral Mask. Hopefully, Rob, I answered your question well enough. In total, I like locks that come with a built-in game-ending timer, and generally dislike ones that don't have one attached. Overall though, if your deck is balanced for the table you're playing at, and everyone is fine with playing against that strategy, then there is really no lock I would call a bad lock that should be avoided. Tell me, are there any locks that you like a lot? Did this video warm you up to certain locks? Are there any locks you dislike more than others? Let me know down in the comments below, and until next time, bye!